Hello, I'm so glad that you're joining me today. It's been a little while. I've kind of been all over the place getting some projects done at home and might have some, even amidst this craziness, I kind of have some moving and projects to do. So that's why I am sitting at my smaller easel, just playing around with some colors. I love this because it's super easy to get out, and the setup I've been working with I can kind of take anywhere. So I am drawing right now. That's just multimedia paper, so it can be good for watercolor, acrylics, pencils. Really, it just means that it's a slightly heavier weighted paper than your normal drawing paper, but it's usually still not quite as thick as actual watercolor paper, which I do recommend. Hot press or cold press, whichever you're more comfortable with. But this was just some scrap paper that I had lying around, so I thought I would play with it. I've got it taped on my board, and what you see me drawing with here are woodless watercolor pencils from Arteza. I'm not supported by them or anything. I just wanted to let you guys know what I'm using in case you like it. And these woodless watercolor pencils, you can sketch with them just like you would with regular colored pencils, but the trick is we're going to add some water here down the road, and it really makes the colors become very vibrant and they kind of pop off the page. So I've been playing around with that and trying to kind of figure out what I want to do. And like I said, this is just an automatic drawing. I like them because it's so loose and easy just to get in there and let your mind draw the shapes for you. You don't have to sit and think, I'm drawing a flower and I need it to look this way. So really great way to loosen up, maybe get some stress out. I know when I'm really stressed, rather than a bunch of loopy shapes, I get really scratchy ones, but even then that feels so good just to relax into it, take away that need to make it perfect. Here we go with some of the green. I personally like using the same four colors. I do the same thing when I do my acrylic pours. I always find a red that I like, a yellow, a green, and a blue. And I really do find that by keeping it simple and using just those four colors, I can really blend them into each other and get a lot of cool different effects. And I really like the overall kind of color feel that it gives the piece. So those are the colors that I like. My yellow always has to be kind of a good golden yellow. I don't really care for it too much when it's too lemony. As much as I like lemons, I don't know about you guys, but citrus is awesome. Lemon and limes. I could eat lime chips forever. They're so good. A little bit more. You can see it more and more taking shape. I know it was really hard to see initially with that yellow, and here we go. This is just a size 8 round brush. It is a watercolor brush, so you don't want to be too forceful with it. That's how you end up splitting those hairs. I kind of have a little bit of that going on, but when it's nice and wet and you're just going through and blending, exact same way that you would with watercolors, you may want to do sections of your painting at a time and not have two wet sections right next to each other, because when you have those wet sections next to each other, they can still bleed into each other and you might lose some of the form that you were going for. So if you want that effect, definitely go for it. If not, and you're wanting to keep a little more structure, I'd recommend working on one section, working on another section, waiting for it to dry and then coming back to it, or letting the whole thing dry and come back to that. So I'm just adding in little shapes. I feel like these bubbles that I draw almost look like portals to another world. So I don't know what I want to do with them yet, but I'm having a lot of fun just creating them. Here you go, add the water. And even though what I really like about these watercolor pencils is even though the color is already on the page, depending on how much color you actually put on there before you add your water, you can move it around and blend it into each other. If you use just a very light touch of water, all that does is really kind of activate that color, but you don't have to lose your lines. All right, and here we go in. I've let it dry. This is now a fine liner pen, and you definitely do want to let that dry before you start taking your marker to it. It's not good for the marker, and if you're working on wet paper, you're more likely to rip the paper. So a little bit of patience, as long as you didn't saturate your paper with water. It shouldn't take too long to dry. Or same thing, if you were working in sections, you can always start with a dry section and then work your way to the wet section as soon as it's dried. And here really I'm just adding back in the forms as I saw them start taking shape when I was doing the initial drawing. just kind of redefining and reinforcing the things that I see and what my vision really was for the piece. So it's a little bit abstract, but you can definitely I think you can see some forms emerging as I add these lines back in. Like I said before, I really feel like those look almost like portals to other worlds. So I like adding in little cities or any sort of kind of shapes that make it look like it would go somewhere magical. I think I'm gonna have to work on my lighting though. As you can tell, it's really quite a light piece, and I do enjoy painting in very soft tones. I don't want to call them pastels. I need to look up what the name is for that. Just very, would I call them muted colors maybe? I think pastels, and I think those pinks and blues and yellows, but really these are like that. They're much softer. They don't have that whimsicalness to them, I don't think. I'm just changing out the color of my markers. I'm coming in here with a gray. I'm not going to add black to this piece just because with those light colors, as soon as you add in that black, which you absolutely could, it would very much be a statement. And that's what you have to keep in mind as you're picking your composition and the colors that you're going to put in there, the effect and the mood of the entire piece that you want. And I just like this being really soft and dreamy. And there I go up at the top, kind of redefining. I've got a little bit of a city happening outside the circle. I do love the amount of bubbles I have up around the top there. I think that adds such a fun thing. Like you could bounce on them from one to the other. I think that'd be so much fun. I always think that when I look at clouds, I'm like, I know my hand would just go through it, but don't they look so soft and fluffy? I think they do. I want to touch them. I love textures. I want to touch everything. If I think I know how something feels, then I absolutely want to touch it. And you're not always allowed to touch things. And there it is. Now you can see it without all that yellow lighting. That just happens when I'm up in the living room and relaxing as I'm working on something. But I really quite like the dreamy, ethereal kind